What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Robert. For all my new subscribers, welcome. You guys will find this video very valuable, especially if you are just now hearing about the rental arbitrage opportunity. Yes, it's 2019. Yes, people have been doing this for 10 years now, but you guys are just now hearing about it, and this is becoming a very popular business model for anybody to take action on, especially middle-class people who have money sitting around where they can invest in a unit or two. This is a very great cash earning opportunity. When I say cash, I mean cash. You guys will generate hard cash with your Airbnb listing. With that being said, let's move on to the downsides that this business model does have. And I want to make this very clear. Yes, it's easy to get excited. Yes, it's easy to sit here and just get ready to jump the gun on this. But there's a few things that you have to consider when getting started with this business model that you can't overlook. I'm going to be talking about 3 of them in this video. So I recommend you stay tuned. You will definitely find this valuable and find it helpful. And if you do, please be sure to leave a like. What's important to note here is that if you can identify these markets where there's a very big gap between long-term and short-term rental prices, you will be able to profit. You'll be able to make money. The important part of this whole thing is being able to identify those markets. You don't want to get into a market where your arbitrage, or like the difference between long-term stays and short-term stays, isn't going to give you profit. There are some markets in the US and some specific cities that arbitrage doesn't work, and you will actually lose money if you try to do this. So stay tuned until the very end. You guys, I'm gonna go over a few of these cities in the US that aren't a good opportunity for rental arbitrage. I'm gonna get into that. That's the very last point that I'm gonna talk about. So if you wanna hear more about that and wanna see these cities I'm talking about, just stay tuned. You will find it very valuable. The first downside, and this is the biggest downside to this whole entire space, that is regulation. You cannot, and I mean it, you cannot host in a city that does not allow this. They will fine you, and you will just be in a very bad situation. You're gonna be doing bad business. Let's say that you try to do this around the city's back. They will crack down on you, and a lot of cities have been doing this. My city just recently regulated the business model. Now, they didn't make it impossible. They didn't make it illegal to host. They made it very difficult. I recently experienced the whole entire regulation process for short-term rentals here in Springfield, Missouri. They passed regulations, and there's a density restriction now for single-family homes, and you have to get licensed. You have to go through this whole application process. It is quite arduous. It's quite difficult to get a license here, and especially if your neighbor is doing Airbnb and they're already licensed, you can't do Airbnb anymore because of that density restriction. So this is a very, very big downside to the Airbnb arbitrage space. Now, on the opposite side, for cities who have non-restrictive regulations, they are seeing a massive increase in occupancy tax revenue from Airbnbs in the area. It's just overall a positive for the community and for everyone there. There are cities that don't allow this, so be very careful. If you're considering getting started, just make sure to check with your local laws and local regulations. This overall will help you determine if your location is great for this opportunity or if it's not. Now, that is the biggest downside you have to look at. I think anybody trying to get started, don't overlook this whatsoever. You do not, and I mean you do not want to start hosting illegally. That is just going to hurt you long term, and you're not going to be able to have a sustainable business from there. The second downside to this, and this is a very big downside to rental arbitrage, is getting the approval from the owner. I just talked about all the regulations and stuff. So let's say that your city does allow it, and you're like, oh, that's a good thing for me. I can do Airbnb here, no problem. Your next obstacle you face is getting approval from a property owner or from an apartment complex, whatever the case may be. Getting that approval is a massive downside. It's not going to be very common for you to find property owners or management companies who allow this. So that is going to be your biggest challenge. That's going to be the biggest downside. I recently just made a video talking about 5 ways to go over landlord rejections, which I think is helpful. And the reason I made that video is for you guys who are just coming into this space. You guys think you can just breeze right through this whole process. Keep in mind the massive regulation downside and the massive challenge of getting approval from a landlord. Per Airbnb's terms of service, you need written approval from the homeowner to list a property on Airbnb if it's not your own property. What that means is that you need to find a way to get the homeowner's approval, and this poses many challenges for a lot of people, especially if you don't have people skills, especially if you're not comfortable with meeting with maybe high profile individuals or landlords who own multiple properties, property management companies. For those of you guys who do prevail, for those of you guys who have what it takes to get past that, that obstacle, which is going to be your first loophole. Honestly, before you do anything, before you start learning any other information online, that's going to be your first challenge, getting that approval. Once you overcome that first challenge, your chances of succeeding are going to be a lot higher. At this point, we've already discussed the 2 biggest challenges and the 2 biggest downsides to Airbnb rental arbitrage. If you're wanting to get started, regulations are going to be a pain in the butt to get through. And if you're not, dealing with regulations, maybe the challenge of getting a landlord to approve your lease is going to be a big deal. Now, this brings me to the last point here. This last downside to Airbnb rental arbitrage is a very important one because it affects the way that you will make money or lose money. Signing on to a 1-year lease on a losing property is not going to be in your best interest. The fact that Airbnb works for some people in some specific cities across the US doesn't mean it's going to work for you. I'm going to dive into my computer and we will look at a screen share which goes over cities that are profitable and which cities are not profitable, and it gives you an idea of like what the arbitrage model actually looks like when you calculate it with this formula. So guys, here we are. This is an AirDNA article kind of breaking down the rent potential that certain locations have. AirDNA, they are a tool that I've talked about in the past. You guys can find those videos on my channel. But what we're looking at here is the rental arbitrage formula. So essentially you have monthly rent, which is the long-term price for your area, whatever it may be. It varies depending on location, minus the average monthly revenue per the last 12 months. And that equals your monthly arbitrage potential. So let's look at some cities that aren't too good for this opportunity, meaning that the monthly rent is higher than what you can make with rental arbitrage. This is a very simple and very easy formula to calculate depending on where you're at. AirDNA, like I said, once again, they scrape information off Airbnb's website and they are very helpful when it comes to locating great markets. You guys can check them out for that. Right here, we are looking at some of the worst markets for one bedroom properties for rental arbitrage, which is what we're talking about on this channel primarily. You guys already know. You can host long-term with your own property, but we're talking about rental arbitrage here. So in San Francisco, California, monthly rent is about $3,700, and the average short-term rental revenue you'd make in a year is $3,200. So you're looking at a negative revenue potential, right? So right off the bat, we can see that being in San Francisco, you would be losing money if you were to start doing rental arbitrage. This brings me back to the downsides, right? We're talking about downsides of rental arbitrage. This right here alone will definitely ruin you if you decide to start. Let's say you're regulated. Let's say that you can easily acquire multiple units, no big deal. But if you're in a market where your monthly rent long-term is higher than your short-term earnings, you will lose money. Hands down, the biggest downside to this. I want to make that very clear. Let's just look at a few of these, right? You guys can clearly see San Jose, your monthly rent is estimated at $2,850 and your short-term rental potential, $2,108. You're losing about $400 a month on that lease. So let's say you're in San Francisco. Let's say you had a listing on the outskirts of San Francisco, in a nearby town, and you're making profit. You can offset that listing if you do make that mistake and you sign that lease. The whole point here is you want to do your research. You want to make sure you're not signing in an area such as San Francisco, New York, Oakland, where you're not going to be making any profit. And these aren't just, on the West Coast. You think, California has the highest rent, of course, whatever. We're looking at a few markets for 2 bedrooms here as well. Scottsdale, Arizona. If you have a 2-bedroom apartment, your monthly rent on average is $2,000, give or take. Your short-term earnings are about $1,600. For whatever reason, obviously there are various factors that affect the way that the marketplace works, and the seasonal influx of travelers or people traveling to that specific place. You guys can see here, Chandler, Arizona, again, you're losing money on these leases. These are the worst rated cities for earning potential in the US. If you are in any of these cities, your options, like what do you do if you live in one of these cities? Your options are simply to go on the outskirts, go somewhere where you're not necessarily in that specific location. The only solution that I can come up with here is hosting remotely, right? So setting up your business, structuring your business in a location that is not here. It's pretty clear to me that there are certain markets that this won't work in, and if you guys are from these markets, you're not out of luck, you're not completely screwed. You can potentially find listings in areas that are closer to where you live, and that is your solution. Thank you so much for staying tuned for this video. You definitely found it valuable, so leave a like. Hello, this is Robert speaking. Hello, this is Robert.
Hi, Robert. This is Ashley. I'm with Impress Property Solutions. How are you?
I'm great, Ashley. How are you doing?
Doing well. I was just returning your call. You had called for Amanda
Yes.
about the property.
Yes. Would it be possible for us to schedule a meeting? I know she's very busy.
What is it that you're looking for?
I think it'd be better if we discuss it in person.
Okay.
S-
I can see if I can arrange that. I would
Okay.
prefer her availability with that. But so basically, what is your business?
I just have a company where I can locate short-term stays, so I can locate people needing to travel for work, etc. And I make more money on top of, I can generate more income than what the rent costs doing this, and therefore I can afford to lease a unit from you guys, help you potentially fill the occupancy. I know a lot of apartments don't have 100% occupancy all the time, so I can guarantee that I'll be a long-term tenant for you, generating income on top of the rent that I pay.
Okay. Let me relay all of that to her.
Okay.
Says when would your availability be on Wednesday?
I mean, as soon as Monday, if that's okay.
Okay. I will relay the message.
Okay.
Have anything on the calendar available that way.
Okay, perfect. I know there's some complications with the lease and how we work it out, but that's why I kind of want to meet in person so we can go over all that stuff.
Okay.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley. Okay, bye. Well, uh, you guys just witnessed that firsthand. That was an apartment complex. They just called me. I wasn't expecting to do that in front of the camera. I was kind of choked a little bit, but yeah, I'm actually in the phase where I'm expanding and I'm looking to acquire more units for my business. In particular, you guys just witnessed that firsthand. I recently had just met the leasing agent, and he got me in contact with his manager, and they got me in contact with their corporate. So that was, corporate calling, asking me about, kind of what I want to do moving forward with this. I'm going to set up a meeting with them, so hopefully they get back with me Monday. I've been waiting on this. I initially made the meeting happen on Tuesday. I'm looking to acquire 2 units from this apartment complex in particular. I know they're going to do really well. Yeah, you guys just witnessed that. I don't know, I wasn't expecting to do that on camera, but there you guys go. So, where was I? I probably butchered that, but it's okay. You guys just literally see that there's not much to it. You just gotta kind of go through the process. So, thank you guys all for staying tuned. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys all in the next one.